Recording is
Okay, got it. Hello, everyone. This is Cassie. I am presenting today. I think that's what I'm doing. This is a little picture that I saw, which I thought was really, really cute since I'm doing the medical and psychosocial aspects of chronic illness and disability. So I just thought I was trying to find some type of visual stuff to put in here where it wouldn't be so boring. Next slide. The models of chronic illness and disability, I just summed this up. We're going to be talking about the medical, and under medical, there's the functional model, and under social, there's a minority group model and independent living. And then under the third one is biosocial model, and it includes the ICF and the WHO. So when I start, you will see when I start talking about it, how it fits under there. Has anybody had time to review and read themselves or no?
This is Kennedy. I had a chance to read some of it. I'm familiar with the medical model and a bit of I'm a little familiar with both of them. I had a class last year that talked about them, but not in the depth as what this section is talking about.
It's really in depth. Okay. Okay, next. The medical model, the definition conceptualizes chronic illness and disability as a phenomenon, whatever that is, stems solely from a disease or disorder, requires medical interventions to fix and or cure the condition. Next. These are some of the key points of the medical model. I didn't, tell me, Kennedy, if I'm doing it wrong. I didn't know how to really, because it's just too much stuff. So I tried to pick out key things. So I want to stress to everybody, if you want to go back and read and whatever, I tried to pull out because of course you couldn't write the whole book verbatimly on these slides. So this is what happened. The key points of the medical model to me is in the United States, this model is used to determine eligibility for education, vocational, financial, legal, and government entitlements. So they rely a lot on this model. Medical professions, I guess, such as ourselves, perform disability determinations based on these clinical impressions and the severity of the conditions and how it impacts the person. So it depends on this model as well. We ignore societal attitudes. People with disabilities are abnormal and defective because it talks about that under this model. So I tried to pull out the key facts because it was so much going on and so much reading. This model also focuses on the diagnostic labels and cause of health conditions, paying close attention to their deficits, limitations, medical interventions for treatment and or cure. And this model is the foundation of the functional model. So under the medical model, there's a functional model that goes into great detail. Next slide. The functional model, the disability is based on the functional limitations that influence our individual abilities to perform daily tasks and partake in work, school, and social life. So the functional limitations, I used to work in home services, so they look at, you know, if the person is able to, their activities of daily living, are they able to eat, are they able to bathe themselves, are they able to pay their finances, their mobility is like, you know, can they walk, can they communicate by themselves? Social is actually getting out the house. Can they get out and go to the doctors and everything by themselves? And psychological limitations, do they actually have the mindset to do the things that they need to do? This is what this model is about. Next slide. And if anybody has any questions, just stop me because that's when it gets really different. There's a difference, even though functional model is under the medical, there's a difference between the medical and functional model. And I put that on here. The medical, it focuses primarily on the diagnostic labels and the cause of the health conditions. However, the functional model focuses on determining what aspect of the individual's work, school, and social life is impacted. So one is looking at the medical and the other one is looking at the things that you can do in your activities of daily living. The type of supports for individuals with functional limitations, we look at this in the supports that they can give to somebody that has a functional limitation. They can give you accommodations, modifications, and assistive technology, AT, commonly used to decrease the level of disability within a particular context. And so right here, I put examples over here like smartphones, tables, software, accessible computers. I know some of my students, I've got them the talk to speech. I've gotten them for the ones that have visual problems, large magnifying screens to put over their laptop, recorders, all those different things like that that can actually assist them. Accommodations, that's environmental, the things that we can do to assist them if that means getting I had one student that needed a reacher and just different things like that. So these are the accommodations, modifications, and ATs that kind of go hand in hand.
I have a question on here. So, like, I'm thinking like a person with a severe disability, say that they have a T-spine or maybe a little bit right above between the T-spine, I think the C-spine, further up between the neck and the shoulder. When they are disabled to that point because they've lost all functions of their body to be able to control themselves, what would be some accommodations and modifications and assistive technologies would you use to help that client?
I had somebody who was actually paralyzed and everything like that. And so we actually made modifications to their wheelchair and ball one. So he used his breath to actually blow in it to move because he couldn't move anything else. So, so just him blowing into it, from his neck up could move, but nothing else could move it. He could actually work the computer that way. He still could talk. So we did the talk to speech that actually read it out, whatever, when somebody called and everything like that. So it was really, really nice for him.
That's pretty cool. I've yet to experience or work with a client like that, but I was always kind of thinking about how would you handle that? I remember somebody going to interview questions saying, if somebody has a T-spine and has a T-spine injury, what would you do for them? And I'm like, well, that just depends. But no, that's pretty cool.
So in my job, we've modified cars. Like some students going to school, like one young man, he was paralyzed from the waist down, but we put the pedals on and he worked everything with his hands. So we really, really do that. Their cars, anything that they need, we actually put in we call it home services, where we had a personal assistant assigned there to them, like one of the students at school, got them to class, had them. So anything to make them able to, the end result with my job is having them be able to work. So any kind of accommodations, modifications, or any kind of AT they need, we can actually get it for them with me working for them.
Thanks for sharing. Appreciate that.
No problem. Okay, the next one is the social model. The social model, it's health conditions that are inherently disabling, but the societal exclusion and inaccessibility environments designed for the able bodies are disabling. Examples of inaccessible environments are missing curbs, a lack of a ramp, a poorly placed elevator, a lack of rail. Like I had some students, the elevator didn't work. So we really had to go in there and make sure that things were not inaccessible, but accessible to go in and work with a disability specialist on campus to make sure that the elevators work, that there were braille reading on the inside, because some people, even though they're visually impaired, they're not blind, but they're visually impaired. So they need things like that. So this is what this model really speaks to. That's what I want to say. Next slide. The social model really was this model really came out of political actions. The ADA, as I have on here, is an example of a law to protect people with disabilities from discrimination, injustice, and inaccessibility. The Individual with Disability Act, I think we talked about that a little bit, Act from 1990, Section 504, it's designed to reduce the barriers from work to school and community for people with disabilities. This model is grounded in the disabilities right movement. So even we have the medical, we have the functional, but this one, the social model, is really grounded, and it played a big part in getting this developed. Under here is also self-advocacy, my lips are dry, is a critical component of this model. So self-advocacy is based on people with disabilities engaging in social and political collective actions to shape their social roles and legal treatment. So that's social. Mm-hmm.
Can I go ahead and interject? And I do have a question for the group here. Mm-hmm. Based on your locations, what companies, I mean, you don't have to be explicit, but what type of stores and companies do you see that are either ADA accommodating or non-ADA accommodating? What's been your experience?
Mostly the big name stores, the chain brands, are really good about it. A lot of the mom and pop stores claim hardship because it costs too much money. The parking is always available. It's always there. I know that was a problem in our town in the past. The handicap spots were too far away. Because of our public buildings, a lot of them are not accessible because they're so old. So, but they have ramps to get in, but that's it. You know, there's no elevators. It's very unusual.
And I appreciate you sharing that. Here where I live, I can say some parts of my city is ADA accessible and a lot of parts are not. Like I would have thought that, for example, certain dollar stores or convenience stores that promote for cheap and expensive stuff, which I enjoy shopping at those places, would have ADA simple accessibilities, like the button to press so the door automatically opens. Many of the stores here do not have that. And it's baffling because it's like, why even today do we still have certain, when it comes to mom and pop stores, understandable, but why when it comes to big chains, are they still not providing ADA accommodations? Well, I guess my other question is, whose job is it to make that point about it? Is it up to us as a rehab counselor to be the counselor to be the active person on that, or is it just up to the next person that actually has an issue to say something? How about yourself, either Rose or Ama, or even you too, Gabby? Anybody can chime in on this.
I think my job at the police department, like that was not, actually it still isn't very ADA. In fact, I have yet to see anybody working there in a wheelchair. I know that to get into the building, the button's never working. And there was a button installed just like maybe recently, but it doesn't work. And then if you go in through the actual parking lot, there is no handicap parking spaces at all, like in our employee parking lot at all. Like you have to park in the front, but that's for visitors, which is like we're not allowed to park there. So if I had a disability, I would not be able to park there with my wheelchair, and I wouldn't be able to go into work unless I was really, really early, so I could go around the whole building and get on the ramp, which is on Piedras. It's not friendly. If you guys ever stop by, if you're in El Paso, it would be the headquarters in Five Points, Rainer and Piedras in Montana.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's old area too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And how about yourself, Raja? I don't know if she can hear me. Oh, maybe she's on phone. Rose, would you be willing to share anything? No. Okay. I mean, that's just something to think about too, because like if we want our clients to come to a facility and get seen, we also got to think about their accessibility to get to come and see us. That's why sometimes it might be, in some cases, better to go and see them, depending on what it is. And I still think there's not enough being done for those reasonable accommodations federally and state for the most part, yes. But when it comes to like certain companies and corporations, especially big chain ones, no. I think many of them still have a ways to go.
This
So.
I'm sorry, I couldn't unmute quick enough. This is Ama. I just wanted to add, just like where I work, they do have, I work at a university, so they have the accommodations for parking, and actually the room that I work in, I'm serving a capacity as a career counselor, but the room that I work in, it was a ADA set room, the area, like everything is low, like the lights, where you go to the lights are low, when you go to the bathroom is low, and just in terms of different placement. And because we have a division for students and staff for accommodations, reasonable accommodations for all classes, and any other types of things, they're connected to the agencies within the city that provide the assisted technology and things like that. So.
Appreciate you sharing that. Thank you so much. It's definitely helpful, because certain parts of the region where we're at, they're more accommodating than other places like us. I feel like El Paso sometimes it's a little backwards. So thanks for sharing. All right, Cassie, thank you.
Oh, next slide. Okay, oh, it continues. I talked about what self-advocacy includes, and this is taking control of one's life, speaking up for oneself, being in control of one's resources, and having the right to make life decisions without undue influences or control from others. Self-advocacy organizations have been instrumental in advocating for the rights of people with disabilities by promoting independent access, justice, and disability as a diversity by fighting to eliminate disabilities as a stigmatized status. The minority group model and independent living are also very essential. So what I did was, they talked about these two, the minority group and the independent living model. I don't know if anybody has time, if you want to pull that up. If it's okay, Kennedy, if you can pull that up in the book. Because at some point,
Let me do that.
Can you pull it up?
Yeah, I'm doing that right now.
It's not even that much about it to see how they incorporate, so that's social. There it is right there. The minority group and the independent living model. Right there. Oh, can you pull it up? That was good. The smaller one, that was fine. Right there.
Okay.
So right there in reading this. Oh.
Okay. Sorry.
Did it move again? Oh.
That was my fault.
That's okay. So it talks about how these two models, iterated of the social model, also proposes that disability is not a personal attribute, but is caused by and should thus be remediated by society. So I was reading, I didn't even know what else to put for it. I just know that it was included in here. So I don't know, Kennedy, what do you think? In addition, to what I said.
So I want to say, when it comes to the minority group model, because I just finished taking a class last semester in multicultural counseling. That, I think, is what they're referring to, is like how different cultures approach what a disability is. I think that's what that's referring to. Okay. And then the independent living model is, I think that's tailored more towards, well, a person being self-sufficient, so to speak. So they give them enough what they need to help them function from day-to-day life. It's not really looking for a job. And but it makes
pretty much being able to live on their own in their home and what they need.
Exactly.
Right.
It's what's around them, what is their supporting groups that's going to help them get there, their agencies and stuff like that. The independent living. And with minority group, it's like cultural and identity. So if you're like LGBT and disabled, African American disabled, stuff like that.
Right. Okay.
So instead of taking and saying that you just have a disability, I'm thinking it's what does your culture or society view what a disability is, as far as what you can and cannot do. Able versus disabled on the medical model. Okay. That's kind of how I see it. And I think No, they don't mention that here. This is the comparison. Oh, here we go, between the social model and disability. I think what's also going to be helpful is if you read in the section in the red book, this is going to tell you the difference between the medical model and the social model. So, like for example, in the definition, it results from impairments of body function structures, but in the social model, it's imposed on top of impairments by society. It's a difference. Right. So, all right. I don't know if you can chime in here and help it out, but basically, something's wrong with you. Something's wrong with you in this definition. This here is what is stopping you from being included into the society.
Yeah, I didn't, this chart here, make sure y'all refer to it. I didn't put it onto the thing, but I was just gonna say refer to this, explains the difference between the two. So, yeah, which is really good.
Definitely. That table is gonna be a big help. Anything else?
No.
All righty.
Okay. Next. The biopsychosocial model. It poses that health and disabilities reflect a complex interaction of biological, psychological, and social factors. This model expanded the understanding. So what it did was this model here combined the two and kind of put it together. That's what I said, perspective of the medical and social model to include aspects from both. So that's what this one did. So it implies that many factors, not just health itself, determines the functional impact of health conditions and level of disabilities. So again, it took the two that we just talked about and combined them together. So I'll talk about this one. Next slide. I don't know what's happening on here. I highlighted it with yellow just to see how it would look, and I tried to get the yellow off, but okay. Under the biopsychosocial model, it includes the International Classification of Functioning Disability and Health and the World Health Organization. So under the biopsychosocial, incorporates these two things. So I put some facts in here and I tried to pull everything together because it was several pages of reading. So I got the ICF and the WHO is a world leading biopsychosocial approach for conceptualizing health and disability. It placed the focus on function and health. It acknowledges that everyone has the potential to experience a decline in health with degrees of some point. Just like us, I think some of us said, you know, I know that I have a disability and my job always asks our job, anybody that hired, do you have a disability and everything like that. So it looks at that even though we're healthy, we have the potential to experience a decline in our health to some degree of disability. It also promotes the concept of disability not as a problem with a person, but rather a result of aspects or barriers found within the social and physical environment, meaning that potential for this disability is universal to human experience and not limited just to the minority of the population. It also addresses more than disability. It classifies health-related states with or without disabilities because its emphasis is on the function and health conditions with both being continuing, meaning ongoing and changing slowly over time. So this was a big old read. So what I wanted to do was condense it and kind of put it together for me and for you. So I hope y'all understand that. Any questions regarding that? Because I took like 3 paragraphs and kind of condensed it the way I saw it. Any concerns with this, Kennedy? Okay. Okay. The definitions in biosocial model. These are some of the definitions that were defined under here. What is health? The functions, a person's body activity and participating functions, the context, the individual person and environmental resource and barriers. It also explained what a disability was. It also talked about the body structure. And I think that's where I referred to, it's another chapter, another table in the book that explains all of this. So I tried to kind of put it together in here. So under the biopsychosocial model, it gave definitions of all these and explained these in great detail with examples. Okay. Next. Okay, also here's more definitions. It talked about the body functions. It talked about the different types of impairment in our bodies. It talks about activities, the things that execution of a task or action by an individual. It talks about our participation and involvement in life situations, our restrictions, problems that an individual may experience and involvement in their life situations. And it also talked about environmental factors that make up physical, social, and environment in which people live and conduct their lives. So in this one, it gave a lot of definitions and it incorporated all these definitions with examples. I didn't know how to put all the examples on there, so I just put the definition and say refer back to the table to look at all the examples that they gave for each of these.
Let me go ahead and just briefly take a look at that real quick.
Okay.
Okay, no, in the first one, was this the one you're talking about as far as the first set of definitions?
No,
Was
the
this...
6.2.
Okay, 6.2.
Did I put the right one?
Oh, okay. It breaks it down.
Yeah, it breaks it. No, go back up to the other one, 6.2. Because yeah, you know, it talks the definitions of the ICF components. So it's talking about that incorporates it. The ICF component, it explains everything. And even if you look at that, you know, the problems are, you know, the body functions and everything like that. So it was really nice how they did it. And then they had a lot of charts on here that also explain. I didn't know how to put those on here, but yeah, but go back and look at all the tables and everything, because it was filled with a lot of tables. And the component, go up to 6.3, the component 6.3. See, it talks about that. If mental, it's looking at the structure, it's looking at the nervous system. If you go over here, sensory and pain, it's looking at your eyes and ears and everything like that. So it's going back and forth. It's telling you, you know, what they're doing, you know, and everything like that. So the functions of the digestive and metabolic and endocrine, it talks about all of that. And over here, it talks about your activity and participation. If you go up a little bit, I had that on a slide. So I just took a few out. The activities and participation, they look at that. Your learning ability to apply knowledge, your mobility, what is your self-care? Can you bathe yourself? Are you able to, this is how you grade, are you able to walk and do things on your own without support? Or do you need a walker or cane? Community, social, and civic events, community or social, can you go shopping on your own or do you need supports with that? Environmental factors, it's talking about supports and relations and attitudes. So I explain that in great detail in the next slides. So see, that's what I did, what we just went over, and I said refer to 6.3. So I just took some of them off and say how when you're looking at the components of the ICF model, it looks at the function. So if you know mental, it'll tell you you're looking at the nervous system, or sensory and function and pain or whatever like that. I tried to line it up. You're looking at the, did I put that? It's supposed to be I. But the voice and speech functions is the overhead. So this is the structure. And then activities and participation, they talk about the things that you're able to participate in. And then the environmental factors, you know, what is needed or what it could help you under this model. Okay, the psychosocial, environmental, and attitudinal aspect of chronic illness. The psychosocial is, oh, what does that put this? The interrelatedness of psychological and social factors of health, function, and disability and well-being. Within the ICF model, the psychosocial factor includes those filling in the personal and environmental domains. Next. The definition of the psychological factors, I don't know if that's encompasses an array of emotions like feeling and moods in your affect, your cognitive, your beliefs and thought, your behavior, your actions, and your experience and of the experience of the individual. Important fact regarding this factor is that it is important to understand the experience of those with disabilities, including your self-concept, your self-esteem, your social identity, body image, your resiliency, and empowerment of self. And I want to say the next slide, it gives, I want to say definitions. Yes. So these were the definitions of what a self-esteem is: social identity, body images, resiliency, and self-determination. Self-determination is one that I looked at because it's rooted in the theories of human agency. And HD refers to the capacity of humans being able to make choices and to impose those choices on the world. Next.
Just real quick, does HG mean human agency?
Yeah, I just didn't, because it would pop out the side, I just abbreviated it. Social factors. It encompasses a broad umbrella of personal, family, and community relationship, as well as environmental and attitudinal factors. The social support is important, especially with those with chronic illness and disability. Relationships with family, friends, peers, and co-workers, service providers, and community connections provide a context to support of any process through which social relations promote health and well-being. So the key here in this one is a support that one is being given. Next. Okay, this is the environmental. These are some of the environmental resources and definitions, what work means, the benefit of work, the loss ability to work may influence one's social identity, and then the facts on this one. The workplace accommodation, the AT are essential functions of jobs with accommodations. Job modifications and alterations may be helpful in maintaining one's job. So these are the things that you actually look at. Will the person be able to work? And if so, what resources are you giving to them to be successful? Some of the barriers is a lack of, to a person with disabilities, is a lack of physical access in their homes, at work, school settings, healthcare, service deliveries, and in general, just overall in the community. I know somebody was talking earlier about, not having accessibility in stores. I know here in Chicago, we have a lot of accessibilities and different things. I know like in Target, we have like probably 20 spaces just in the front, which is, for the handicap and all the different things. I know in Jules, that's a grocery store here, they hire a lot of our students with disabilities. So they have all kind of different things that would help them, and especially the ones that are visually impaired, where they have, big magnifying things outside where they can see the carts in the out in the parking lot and everything like that. So it's really, really good here. The facts, accessibility transportation is a significant environmental barrier for people with disabilities. I know here, because I live in Chicago, but in some of the small areas, we have the L, we have the Metro, we have all these things, but out in the rural areas, there's no bus service. So the accessibility to get some of our clients to and from the office and different things like that. There's no cabs, there's no anything. And even relying on the bus or whatever to come pick them up, that's not reliable either. So that's sometimes that makes it hard for them to be able to be, successful. And that's why I put that on there. So inaccessible transportation can have a devastating impact. Oh, I wrote that twice. In several areas of one's life, their work, school, as well as social participation. So I know I can ask a question of somebody. Do anybody from a small rural area or whatever where they lack a lot of supports with transportation? I know sometimes we even have places out here where they can't even get an Uber because they don't go out that far, especially to our rural areas. Kennedy?
Okay, well, my city's not that big. I mean, we're almost 1 million, but I tell you one thing, our public transit system is nothing like Chicago, nothing like California or New York. If you miss a bus, you got a 45-minute wait. Now, for those with disabilities, they can get access to a special metro lift if they're enrolled in a program, but they have to schedule that days in advance. They can't just say, hey, I need a ride from A to B, so to speak. They have to schedule the things in advance, at least, like I said, 2 or 3 days to get their appointment. So if they have an appointment coming up, they got to make sure to do that well beforehand. I don't know if that's also a factor in Chicago, but then as far as, yeah, so there you go. And also like we don't have trains out here either, and there are some areas that are rural that are dirt roads, and they're not going to have an easy accessible. I'll even give you some examples. Some neighborhoods will have a sidewalk going only up to some point. It'll go to the end of the corner and it goes to nowhere. There's no turning to walk, anything else. It stops. Or some businesses will not have a sidewalk, and so the sidewalk's paved midway throughout the other buildings, and then it's just dirt or rocks, and then the other side is the sidewalk. And so here you are, and if you're in a wheelchair, you have to go out into the street all the way around to get back to continue the sidewalk.
Yeah, you're totally right there. I live in a neighborhood like that, and it's an established neighborhood. You're talking like a 1950s. My house is fairly old. It's beautiful ranch area, but exactly what you're saying. It's like you have a sidewalk and then it ends, and you're like, okay, so where do you ride a bike? Where do you, if you have a wheelchair, where do you get around?
It's true. That's really true.
Yeah. What about in some of those areas? Like, I don't know, Robin, what kind of area do you live in?
I'm in Longview, Texas.
How is ADA accessibility there in Longview?
It's a small city. Pretty much like you were saying, like the sidewalk leads to rocks, or it's hard to get onto the sidewalk. Like where I live, there's a handicapped parking space, but there's no, you would have a time getting a wheelchair up the sidewalk.
Well, there's no ramps or anything accessible for them to actually get up and get down on to the handicap parking lot, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Okay, Rena. This right here was kind of the attitude barriers. It's still most some of the facts, about it is some of the attitudes regarding favorable and unfavorable related to persons, objects, or events. And most harmful environmental barrier is people's attitudes. Most studies show that the attitudes towards people with disabilities are still negative from the readings. Next. Here are some of the negative statements regarding people with disabilities. They're objects of pity, they're menace to societies, they're sick or incompetent, they're psychological or economically burdened to society. It was a word in there called spread, and this happens, with this negative statement and talking, it spreads. It occurs when society assumes, for example, that a wheelchair user is cognitively impaired and spreading the health condition to encompass all aspects of other individuals. Just because a person is in a wheelchair don't mean that they're dumb and stupid, but some people feel and look at somebody that's disabled or whatever like that, they're negative, or or they pity them, or they're a menace. So I thought that was kind of unfortunate, but that's the negative statements regarding in the book People with Disabilities.
I'm going to comment on that. Like here in the Southwest culture, at least down here in El Paso near the border town, there are still some communities that think that if somebody has a disability, that it is a generational curse. They are demonic and possessed, or God is punishing them and their family for that. And they still believe that down here today. It's terrible.
Next slide. Okay, this is where Kennedy, I'm probably going to need you. The 15 origins of attitude toward people with disabilities. You can go to it. It was so many of them, and so I listed them. So I think at the bottom, I think it was cut off. I referred back to the book because it explains, and it also gives examples of attitudes toward people with this. Are you going to it? Okay. Some of this stuff. Some of the stuff was so, you know, you're trying to figure out how to condense it. So, but yeah, it's. And I didn't have any page numbers either on mine to refer back to like what page, because it was a print off.
Okay, was it a table?
No,
Or was it like this here?
Yeah, like that.
Oh, okay. So each one has their own specific. Yeah.
Yes, you see what I'm saying?
You.
So yeah, so trying to like sum all of that up, I think, you know, it's just.
I got you.
Yeah. So just go back and read it, you know, read each section. I don't know if we could go through, but I think it's back a little bit more. This is at the bottom. Yeah. But it just, you know, the origins of attitudes. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, there's a whole bunch of factors, is what you're saying.
Yes, it is. And then they explain it more and everything like that. But I truly didn't know how to. That probably would have been like 15 more pages. So I just actually list them.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's go back to the presentation.
Okay. Okay. Next slide. These are negative attitudes towards disabilities. Stereotypes was one of the ones that they talked about, and exaggerated beliefs associated with the category. So that was page 191. So when I just referred, they did have that, so you can refer back to that. Stereotypical views, see book and review. Prejudice, these are the terminology, terms that they gave that I guess we should know. Prejudice, discrimination, actions carried out in bias on prejudice. Ableism, unique form of discrimination experienced by people with disabilities based on their disabilities. The microaggression, I think one of my friends who took the test, she said this was on there. So, everyday verbal, nonverbal, environmental slights or insults, whether intentional or unintentional. Stigmas, and that's why I said, please review the book and read each section for examples. We will discuss them tonight. So what are, next slide. These are these two interventions aim to change, you know, stigmas, beliefs, and attitudes, refute stereotypes and casual attributions and diminish feelings of differences. Popular interventions for people with disabilities contact a personal experience, inform and educate social influences, disability simulations. Okay. Protest. So these are some of the interventions that you know, people can do. You can protest. You can inform and educate people, because some people are just, you know, they're just really silly. You know, they don't know. And sometimes if you explain it to them, or you take the time out, impression to management, actually go into and talk to. So we have a day where we actually go out and go to the stores and talk to management about, you know, hiring people with disabilities. And some of them will say, well, when it costs too much, will they get here and sue me? You know, different things like that. And also we stress to them that if they hire somebody with disability, there's a tax break for them. So a lot of them like that too. It's unfortunate, but they do hire a lot of our students because our state here in Illinois give employers who hire people with disabilities nice tax breaks.
And actually, I want to ask the group that here. Oh God, that was the question. I wanted to ask the group here, especially some of us here in the South and Southwest and stuff. If you're working with getting people connected to jobs with disabilities, what have been some of the struggles you've dealt with getting your client hired?
I know with me, I guess I can answer something. I know with me and going in and talking with them, to tell them that we have like SEP and Milestone, there's different type of places of supportive employment where we actually have somebody that would be with them and could be with them up to 2 years, like a job coach assisting and helping them. There's like, oh, really? You know, and different things like that. Or, you know, that, you know, we're not just going to drop them off. We're actually going to work with them and we're not just going to drop them off. So then a lot of them are happy. And again, a lot of them are happy actually about the tax break because it's really nice.
Yeah. I've had some clients that I worked with getting them into a job. Like my very first one, the store manager was just taking advantage of the tax credit and wasn't putting that kid to work. And so he was there at that place for a little bit, and then they cut his hours for no reason. And they weren't bringing him back there to work. They wouldn't talk with us why, you know, why weren't they putting him back to work? And they ended up quitting the position. And I don't blame him because they stopped giving him hours. And so I had to work with him to have him apply to different job positions, getting him step by step. And I'll never forget when, I mean, the kid, he's a very honest kid, a very high functioning autism. And when I was sending him out to different job interviews, because he was getting job interviews coming to him, offers for interviews, I'll never forget one agency had a movie theater where they had the audacity to say that he never showed up. And knowing my client, he's usually there 30, 40 minutes early. And I know he showed up. And it hurt when they said that, oh, he never showed up. I don't know what you're talking about. He never was there. And I knew the manager was lying. And at the same time, I was like, if that's how she treats people, not knowing at least who they are, even if they interview once or twice, and you're going to lie to say that or whatever, just to save face. And she also mentioned another comment that, you know, she wants people to look professional in appearance. She has other little comments underneath what she was saying, and it hurt. It hurt to hear that. And I was like, I would never want to do business with an agency. It was a particular movie theater like that again. Fortunately, we got him to work with a company that they never really hired anybody with a disability before, but the manager was willing to give him a shot, and he's still there today. He is still there today. And you'd be surprised with how some agencies, if they're not too sure, if they're willing to work with you, they'll give it a chance, and then they end up really liking their disabled person working for them, because the clients are just happy just to get the job. So that's something I got to experience.
That's true. That is true. Okay, next slide. Here, this is culture and chronic illness and disabilities. And I just wrote the definition down, what is a culture? And per the book, I kind of summed this up. Per the book, there are many different cultural groups that may be characterized, but not limited to age, biological, sex, class, race, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, disability, status, religion, and heritage. Right here, I don't know, when I compared the two books, you know, rehabilitation counselors working with people with disabilities should be well versed in areas and the culture, and as well as have cultural awareness of the different groups. They talked a lot about the Western culture, but in the old book, it talked about the differences between, like, say, for instance, African American probably wouldn't go seek support because they feel like, you know, the culture that their church, you know, or help them or different things like that. A lot of the Native Americans, you know, because they lived on the reservoir, they wouldn't come out, and they just didn't trust like witch doctors or anything like that. They wouldn't. A lot of what else? Hispanics, they just didn't, you know, and that's what it says in my book, but they don't really talk about that. The only thing they talk about here is the Western culture and the Black, Indigenous, and persons of color. So right here, they have a lot of reading on that, and they gave examples and everything like that with them that I didn't really know how to sum, but I guess I can read some. I just didn't want to put all that down there. Let's see, the example that I had was, let's see. Sorry, one minute. I had it wrote down. Okay. I don't know, I can't find it. It talked about, oh, there it is. It talks about the BIPOC, and actually, say for instance, that a cisgender heterosexual, 55 years old, and a woman with cerebral palsy, middle class, would probably have a different type of whatever if there was a 18-year-old experiencing racism, heterocism, ableism. I don't know, I wrote this somewhere, guys, but I can't find it now. But it's talking about how it's a difference, just with just different culture and how you're treated. So the role of the counselor would be able to know the difference and understand the differences of all these different nationalities and cultures. So they gave a lot of examples in the book that I had wrote down. I don't know what, but it's a really, really long one. But I know that it was under this area. It gives good examples, and you can read about, you know, the cultural differences and how they look upon different cultures. So, next slide. The adjustments to chronic illness and disabilities. Adjustment to sudden, unexpected, or life-threatening health conditions generate a variety of psychological response from individuals and their family. Remember, these factors can vary tremendously following the various models, theories, and concepts we've reviewed. So that's what they're saying in here under this one. What the gist of it I got out of all of it is that, you know, based on the various models and theories and concepts that reviews, there are different stages that a person would go through, but not limited to. But they talked about adaptation, adjustment, and exception of their disability. And some never accepted, but none acceptance, not for a while. You know, they're in denial or different things like that. And then finally the response to the disability and finally accepting it. So in here, they have the definitions of all these. I didn't write them down, but say for instance, adaptation and acceptance. Say adjustment, where acceptance occurs when the health condition is incorporated as a part of the individual's self-concept and is accepted. Responsibility to a disability, that's another word that's on here, is considered a more accurate way of describing the psychological process because it's a neutral term communicating that the experience is not necessarily negative, but subjective in a dynamic process and not a one-time event. So right here, these three things, you know, they go through, they say when a person, you know, goes through the stage of adjusting to their disability, that they have, you know, the adaptation, then the adjustment, then finally the acceptance. And here under that section, it goes into great detail about that as well. Okay, the stress coping model, they had under here, they had the different models. So the phases and stage models. So they had the stress coping model here. It was, it talks about the three different kinds of stress, and I wanted to write that. The emotional focus, reducing stress by changing or managing the emotions. The problem focus, reducing stress by problem solving. And the appraisal focus, reducing stress by altering one's assumption or perception. There are different types of coping strategies, and I think that's on the thing too, the denial, the regression, the compensation, the rationalization, and the diversion. So under this stress coping model of adjustment, it defines what coping is, how you cope, and there's three types of coping approaches. That's what I put here. And again, read it because it goes into great detail. Say, like for instance, for example, an individual who seeks social support for assistance to get an appointment for a needed assistive device, or who goes to a movie to reduce social isolation, is using problem-focused behavior coping to reduce the stress by solving a problem with an action, by actually going and do something. So they give good examples of that. And they also give the definitions of denial. coping that involves denial of the health condition and or severity and function impact may occur to moderate or buffer the reality of situations. Regression, compensation, rationalization. So this all here in the book. It's a very long and lengthy definitions about these, as well as they give examples. Okay, the stage focus model. This is another model under disability centrality model of adjustment, quality of life, satisfaction, and perceived control over their medical environmental circumstances. So this is what it's a small paragraph, but it's just the acceptance here of the and succumbing to the disability with this one. You have self-management and health literacy. The definition for self-management, it refers to the daily activity that an individual undertakes to keep a health condition under control or minimize its impact on status and functioning. So this actually went under the disability acceptance model, the self-management, and the health literacy. The health literacy is another important aspect of adjustment to the disability. Health literacy refers to the degree of which an individual has the capacity to obtain, process, and understand their basic health information. So they're understanding actually the health decisions about themselves as well as their disability. And this is something I think that we can work with the individual on, explaining their disability and their limitations and levels of their health literacy. Okay. Here's another one, the family adjustment to disability. It talks about the family and it goes into great detail about how, how the family is affected and what they experience. They tend to experience psychological distress, depression, increased stress, low self-esteem, and everything regarding this phase. So it goes into great detail. It's like 3 chapters about 3 paragraphs about the impact of chronic illness and everything with this one. The sexual gender identity when the context of chronic illness. We explain sexuality and the different components here. It also gives a definition of. Kennedy, are you still here?
I'm still here.
Okay. So right here, it talks about, and again, if you want to show them like the paragraphs or whatever, because it gets in, and again, I truly just didn't know how to, it's too much to sum up, but I have a way of summing it up, but I just felt like I would refer to it and talk about it a little bit and get some of the key facts. It talks about sexuality and different things like that. It's going to give definitions of the different types of, see right here?
Yeah.
So it keeps going and going and going. I truly didn't know how to condense it. It was just, it talks about, the different aspects, their responses, the shock, denial, the anger, and different things like that, that the family can go to in the mental health aspects of it. So it goes into great detail. So, yeah. So.
Yeah, basically it's just
everybody, you see, it's just, yeah. So. I said, Kenny, I don't know how I picked this one. You must have gave it to me.
Actually, that was the very first one you volunteered for.
I don't know. I was like, oh my God, so much. And then just trying to, because we're all degree people and trying to condense all this up. It was kind of hard.
Yeah. If I recall though, when we in the very beginning, when we were putting out who wanted to pick what, you had picked this one. So, and we didn't know. That's why. Anyways, let's keep going.
Yeah, funny. But okay, we're almost there. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, here are some of the sexual myths that, people with disabilities, that they're a defective gene pool, they lack a sexual drive, they're asexual, they're overly sexed, inability to have orgasms, being unable to make decisions about their sexuality, and inability to conceive, give birth, or parent. Because a lot of people, and some people feel, just in reading, that some people, people with disabilities shouldn't have children. And that's horrible, but it's the truth. And that and like, I think Kennedy or somebody said that, they look at people and say, oh my God, they have a disability, something must be wrong with them. Something must be defective in their gene pool. So these are some of the myths about it. And I just took some out and put it in here. Okay. And these are just terms that they gave the definitions of all of them here, definition of sex, sexual orientation, what is gay, what is asexual, what is questioning, what is the same gender loving, pansexual, assigned sex at birth. Of course, we all know what heterosexual is, bisexual, same gender loving. These are all terminology, and they give the definition of them in the book. These right here, I didn't get to, but I did try. Yeah. And I'm sorry, but I'll go back there and actually put them on the slide and everything like that. Kennedy, can you pull them up? See the terms and everything like this? It's just show this part right here, go back up to the terms and everything like that. Just didn't want to think
Are these?
So yeah, so it gender identity. So it talks about, different, gender queer, non-conforming, transgender, gender man. So it talks about all of that. Gender queer, gender. So all these things, transgender. So it's just giving a definition and explaining all the different sexualities. So, yeah. And this is talked about the attitudes and everything like that. That's self-explanatory and everything like that.
If I recommend, when it comes to gender identities and sexuality and stuff like that, I think there's had some really good videos on YouTube that you can look at that talks about that if you don't know what these terms are. But I think us as professionals working in a counseling related field should know pretty much what these terms are.
Yeah,
like
that's
asexual
why
versus...
I just didn't feel like it was necessary to write them all verbatim and all the definitions. I mean, I just didn't. I felt like we could just look at it and kind of go over it because that's what it's talking about. I mean, there's a lot of terminology out here regarding gender and fluid and just, all different things like that are new. And this is not in the other book as well. None of this.
Yeah, because now, I mean, there's a big push for gender identity, and people didn't think that people with disabilities could identify as gay, could identify as transgender, or even asexual. Didn't identify as that, and it really, when it comes to an identity of a person, compared to what their gender assignment is at birth, it would make sense that we need to start including this because guess what? Today's society we have many people who identify with different types of sexualities, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
And we have to be inclusive, or else we are, we are contradicting our ethics.
Right. I had a young man that I talked with him and he told me it was two gender. I was like, oh my God, what is that? But I saw it in here, I guess he identifies as both. I was like, well, that's different. Or they say they fluid, because I mostly work with students. So they're really, really up on this. A lot of them, when we have to ask them, are you male or female? You have some that say that they are, and that's what we have to put down when they're really male. But if looking at them, they look just like a female. So it's kind of different. And it's good that we're talking about all this now. And it's good that it's in this book because it's not in the second edition.
And I think Raja put something in here, so I'm just going to read it out loud. She says I don't have my glasses, but I can read it. She said she's heard of these myths, and it's sad that people with disabilities get viewed differently. I always tell my supervisor they're also human beings that deserve to be fulfilled in life. So let's advocate the best we can instead of drifting away to help them. I can't stand the laziness or the lack of effort that some colleagues and some people can have. So in a way too, you can put that in here, like especially in subcultures, especially like whether African American or in Hispanic, they would send this some depending on, or even like for example, Islamic culture, they really look down upon a gender, somebody identified as a specific gender apart from what they were assigned at birth, you know, and they get frowned upon. So in addition to being disabled and being a minority, they're also being shunned away from a lot of family, especially if they come out.
Right.
And they're coming for that. And then, so now you have that dealing with them not improving on their disability, wanting to take care of themselves because they're being shunned. You know, so it is good that in the book 3 for the red book, if by the way, if anyone listening to this, the red book is referring to the rehab counselor examination from the Springer Publishing Connect. So, all righty. Well, I guess that kind of sums it up. And I guess the key takeaway here, and thank you so much, Cassie, is definitely read if you're not too sure what some of these terms are, and then definitely double check the tables.
Yes, and I think I put that by some of them. Just look at the tables because I just didn't feel like we're all and I hope I did okay. This was the last moment. I mean, literally today.
It's fine.
But that